I wrote about this in my
Hmm.
book, except for Palestine. It's not a plug. It's just that people know in the first chapter of that book, maybe the first chapter. Yeah, the first chapter of that book. Uh, Mitchell Plitnick and I talk about the right to exist discourse. The right to exist as an existential matter is different than the right to exist as a juridical matter. Or the right to exist in a very specific social formation. To be more specific and less abstract, what I mean by that is, if you ask me, do Israelis have a right to exist, perhaps more specifically, do Jews have a right to exist? The answer is unequivocally yes. It's of course, right. But if you ask me, do nation states have a right to exist? I would say absolutely not. The United States doesn't have a right to exist. Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Iran doesn't have a right to exist.
Okay,
Mexico,
so
lo
I'm
siento,
glad you're
doesn't have a
consistent
right to
because
exist.
actually this is what I talk about with a lot of people, and they come from the place where they do believe in nation states except for one. So I appreciate that you're giving me this context because it lets me understand where you're coming from better so I could have a better discussion and conversation with
Let me
you.
add just one caveat.
Yes.
I think when we say right to exist, though, the fact that we only talk about it in the context of Israel, um, I think we're giving Israel, I think we're adding to the conversation, we're smuggling in another piece. When people say the right to exist, they're not talking about territorial integrity. They're
Mm,
talking about the right to exist as a Jewish state. And that,
mhm.
for me, is the conversation we actually have to have. And no one says, does the United States have a right to exist as a republic, or does China have a right to exist? If I said, do you believe in China's right to exist as a communist, blah blah blah, right? No one, you'd have a right to say no. But if I say Israel doesn't have a right to exist in its state formation, then someone would say, well, that's anti-Semitic. And the issue for me with that is that my resistance to Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state is not because I don't think Jews have a right to exist. In fact, I want to do everything I can to make sure that Jews exist safely with self-determination, dignity, etc. My concern is that a Jewish ethno-state is fundamentally anti-democratic. And I don't think it's any more or less anti-democratic than any other nation state that is also an ethno-state. This just happens to be the one that my tax dollars go to. And as a Middle East scholar, it's the one that I care the most about. So I talk about it more. But I don't think it's any more fundamentally a problematic ethno-state than any place else. I just want to put that context out there so you can have that extra piece. I'm going to give you the last word on
Yeah.
this to go, but I want you to have the full last word and analysis before you come back whenever you want.
Wonderful. I guess the last thing I'll say is I also take issue with the discourse of right to exist because people don't understand the nuance of right to exist as. Because when people say, for example, even and this we're going to have to talk about at some other point, when people even say that Zionism is, I believe in Israel's right to exist, you open the door for anti-Zionist of being, I do not believe in Israel's right to exist. And people don't talk about the as clause that you just added. So I think one of the reasons why people are so inflamed on either side is because we have opened the door by defining ourselves and with a movement that's really dead. Zionism met its goal when the state of Israel was established. After that, no one should have been a Zionist. Everyone should just be whoever is Israeli or pro-Israel. Because at that point, if you say, I believe in Israel's right to exist, you're allowing people to negate that point. And that's why the discourse is where it is, because we've left that door open to doubt by keeping alive a movement that fulfilled its purpose already.